the book of John. In this case, the name Yohanan. Some believe his name was, or at least Mashiach turned it into Yahuhanan, in the sense of Yahweh favors instead of just he favors. For Yohanan means he favors. Yahuhanan means Yahweh favors. And he was favored as the beloved of Mashiach, this disciple who wrote this great book and also wrote letters, the epistles of John, and also wrote the book of Revelation. Um, as in the book of Revelation says, to him was given to write the things that were, the things that um well, the things that happened during the time of Mashiach, the things that were happening during his time right after Yahushua's resurrection and ascension, and then what would happen in the end. So the book of Yahuhanan, this one that we're about to read, is regarding the things that happen with Mashiach, everything that had to do with Mashiach. The letters are the things that were going on during the time that everything was being written down. And then comes the book of Revelation, which has to do with the end times and even the end of their time because of the similarities or reflections, prophetical mirrors that happen during the year 70th with the end times. So also the four good news known as gospels, each of them has a main interpretation in which they were written or in which they can be understood according to what each of the disciples wrote. And they go according to the four levels of interpretation of the Torah, known as Pardes, which is Peshat, Remes, Derash, and Sod. So John is written according to the fourth level, the deepest or the highest level. The first is the literal sense, which is connected to the book of Mark, is written as if it was written for slaves or servants, for Mashiach came to serve Yahweh and humanity by dying for us. He became flesh, which represents slavery, in order to free us from death. So Mark presents Mashiach as that, as the servant, and is the most simple one to interpret, even though, and I want to make this clear, I don't know if I'm the only one that says this, but I do believe that all the four good news have the four levels. It's just that the way I'm explaining it is the level that is more common or the main one of the style of writing, right? But the Ruach, no doubt about it, puts different levels in each of those books, not just the one I'm saying. So I want to make that clear. All right. So Mark mainly is Peshat or the literal. Then comes, and also because that has to do with everything that has the number four, like the four letters of Yahweh, the four sides, the north, south, east, and west, and everything that has to do with four. So Mark is connected to from the four creatures that surround the throne of Yahweh with the ox, um, with the servant, the literal sense, and the ox is the back or the west, and when it comes to the seasons is the autumn, yeah, and then or fall. So then comes the book of Luke, which is connected to the face of a man, and Luke writes of Mashiach as the son of man, and that's why he gives the genealogy of Yahushua from Adam, actually Elohim, then Adam, then Seth, and etc., until Mashiach. And he writes of Mashiach as a human so that every human being can feel related to Mashiach when reading the book of Luke. So the main interpretation of that book is the second level of interpretation, and that is remes, which is that you read, and after the literal interpretation of it, you see what you are reading as a hint of something else. So it gives hints of different other things or revelations from scriptures, connections from prophecies, and all of that. So that will be the book of Luke. Then comes, and well, I didn't mention, since Luke will be the man that will be connected to Reuben, which is the main tribe of the three that were on the south around the Mishkan. So um, it is connected to summer. And then comes the third book, which would be Matthew, written as for kings, leaders. Um, so it writes of Mashiach as the King of Kings, as the son of David. That's why the genealogy given in Matthew is that of a king coming from Abraham and then David, which is interesting because I just mentioned how Luke is written to show Mashiach as the son of man, and that's why it writes the genealogy from Adam. And Mark, which writes as a slave, doesn't give a genealogy because a slave doesn't matter pretty much in that sense, right? Where he came from, who's his are his parents. So he's just sold as an object to work. So Mark doesn't give a genealogy, and neither does Yohanan. But in this sense, Yohanan is connected to the eagle of the four creatures, just like Matthew for writing for kings is connected to the lion. Um, and it is Derash, which has to do with um, seeing what is written as parables. So you look or you seek for something deeper from whatever historical account is being given in the writing, in this case, Matthew. We can understand deeper things or more things, teachings through what happened historically as if it were a parable. And then the last, like I said, is connected to the eagle, the one that flies. So that means the highest interpretation that is sought, which is mystery. That is how this book is written. So this is the deepest of the four. So um John, like I said, is sought, the eagle, winter, and from the tribes, he was connected to the tribe of Dan, which was the leader of those three tribes on the north. And this one doesn't give a genealogy because in this case, it refers to Yahushua coming from the Most High. And in fact, since we are actually reading this book in the Spanish teachings as well, we are already on chapter 7. We will see soon how many people didn't believe that he was the Messiah, Mashiach, Yahushua, because they knew where he lived. They knew who his parents were. So they said, but when the Messiah comes, we won't know where he actually comes from. And Yahushua explains to them, you know uh that I am the son of Miriam, right? And you know where I come from in this reality. And I'm paraphrasing. Um, but you don't know my father, which is the one who sent me. So since they didn't know the Father, Yahweh, the true Almighty, and he is the source of Mashiach, then in fact they didn't know where he came from, even though they knew in this reality where he lived. Is that understood? So the prophecy was actually being fulfilled, yet they used the same prophecy to say that it wasn't being fulfilled because their understanding was completely upside down in the literal, in the natural, instead of the spiritual. So That's why we are not given a genealogy in this book, because he is the source of all creation. In fact, part of what we are going to see in this chapter, everything that was created through him, for he is the word, and he is the name above every name. So it wouldn't make sense to put a genealogy as in the sense of putting names before him, for he is the beginning of all, being the first. All right. So I hope so. All right, let's begin. Yahuhanan chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with Elohim, and the word was Elohim. Just this verse could give us a lot of time to explain and receive revelation from. And as you guys may have already noticed, look how similar it is to Genesis 1. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. So John, and like I said, is writing in the highest level of interpretation and is connecting John 1, which is the beginning of the new covenant, to Genesis, which is the beginning of creation. So it is like saying that there is a new beginning happening. As he writes, there's a new beginning through the one who made everything in the beginning, Bereshit, right? So here, the word in Hebrew would be Bereshit. So I will write letter by letter that first word and say what each letter represents, and then I would like to show you guys something. So this is the letter Bet, and is the first letter of the Torah, of the law. Yahweh chose to use this letter for many reasons, of course, no doubt. We will see some of them later, but one that is clear is that Yahweh is one. And when he made creation, he made it with the root of two, because there will be duality in this reality, for he would remain as one. So the letter Bet is the second letter of the Aleph Bet, and therefore has the numerical value of two. So it represents a house. As you can see, there's an entrance on the left, a wall on the right, the floor obviously on the bottom, and the ceiling as well at top. So it is a temple, it is a house, it is also a woman, and there are other symbols that this letter represents. And as a letter, when it's put before a word, it represents on or in or with. So that's why the beginning is in the beginning, right? So in this case, instead of on, just in case, Reshit. Reshit is beginning. I will write it down here first. You see, beginning. So when we add the bed with the Reshit, we have Bereshit, which is in the beginning. But translators are going to say Genesis because that's the name given to the book. But Genesis, in fact, is the name that was taken from the Greek translation, because originally it's called Bereshit, which means in the beginning. That is the first word. Now, like I said, I was going to do one by one. This right here, bar, in Aramaic means son. That's why Baraba was the son of the father, the meaning of that name. That's why when they put Yahushua and Baraba on his side to ask the people whom they wanted to free, and they asked for Baraba to be freed and then for Mashiach to be sacrificed, they brought them as in Yom Kippur when they would bring the two male goats that look similar with each other. That's why one was the son of the Almighty Father and the other one was the son of a father, obviously the enemy. So Bar, that would be son. Also, the Reish, that letter is a head. It represents the beginning of the body, the head, therefore leader. And that's why the son in a family would be the one who would become eventually the head of the house. That's why we have those two letters making that word. Um, and eventually, as in after the house, you see the resh. But then we have the aleph, and here, well, it continues to get interesting because we already have bar, which is sun, and the aleph is the first letter of the alphabet. So we could see here how it says the first son or son aleph, right? Bar aleph. And it is through the first, Yahushua the Messiah, that Yahweh created everything. Bara, this word right here, that is the verb he created. So just in the word, in the Hebrew word that means he created, which happens to be the first half of the first word of the Torah, that means in the beginning, the first half of that word is bara, which means he created. So only in Bereshit we have he created in the beginning, only in one word. But not only that, in the word that actually means he created, we can see that the one who created is the first son, Bar Aleph. Is that understood? All right. So he created Bara, Bar Aleph, the first son. And meaning as in first and last, right? So the Aleph and the Tav would be first and last. Then we get the Shin. This is translated as in the head, as in Berosh. That would be Berosh, because this right here, Rosh, is head. So in the head, which is interesting that there was a prophecy of how the serpent would get its head crushed by the son of the woman, by the seed of the woman, Mashiach. And Mashiach came to die for our sins, and he died on Golgotha, which means skull. So he crushed the skull of a giant representing the serpent. And that was where the son was sacrificed. The son, Bar, who is the first, Aleph, would be consumed or sacrificed or killed, represented by the letter Shin, which represents fire, destruction, change, teeth. Also, here we have the son of fire. And we know that Yahweh is the consuming fire. So the son of Yahweh would be the son of fire, Mashiach. And as we know, the last is the consuming fire. Is Yahweh coming as the consuming fire? For Yahushua came as the water of life. This is sun and this is fire. But I'll continue. Then we have the Yud. And it's also interesting. We only have one letter to go. And here already we have on my head. And Yahweh had in his mind to create everything in the very beginning, and the beginning of the body is the head. So it is like he decided to create everything because that's what he had in his head, in his mind, right? And Mashiach then would come as the head to make the new beginning as the uh, last Adam. And lastly, well, the Yud is a hen, right? As you guys know. In pictographic is the whole arm. Yahweh mentions throughout scriptures his arm and his hand as the first and last. So depending on how you want to see the Yud as a hand or an arm, but even so, when we see Yahweh speaking about the right and left hand, also could represent first and last. So that'll make sense in just a moment. Lastly, the Tav, which is the last letter of the alphabet, and we have this first word, which happens to be the name of the first book of the scriptures. And here, first, if we separate here, well, obviously, not right. You see how messed up. But this second part, that they just decided to translate like that, which they did because of the sound of these three letters together, but that's not what it means. And the translator should put what it means, not how it sounds. Anyways, that would mean six. So bara he created in six. For Yahweh would create everything in 6 days. So in the first word is already prophesied that the creation would be for 6 days, will be going for 6 days. And as you can see, there are 6 letters. So each letter will represent each of those days. And the last day of creation, that is the Tav, which is when throughout human history, the last would manifest, right? At the end of the sixth millennium, as the fire, the hand of Yahweh, that will seal the chosen few on the foreheads. The Tav is a seal, is a mark, is a cross. In the pictographic is a cross. In the Paleo Hebrew is a cross. In this one, is not, but the meaning, the representation remains. So imagine when you think about that, that here we have the sun, and I will even separate these two letters, who is the temple of Yahweh, for he said, destroy the temple and I will raise it up in 3 days, and he was talking about his own body. The son, who is the temple, is the head of the congregation, who would come first, as the first, to be killed by getting his hand on the cross, or as the hand of Yahweh on the cross. He would be killed as the hand of Yahweh on the cross. Not only that, since the Yud is the hand, represents actions, deeds. So, interestingly enough, as well, the numerical value of Yud is 10. So it represents the 10 commandments. Therefore, all the commandments that we should perform. Yahushua is the one who fulfilled all the commandments. Interestingly enough, the law where the commandments are is called the law of fire, Esh. So the son of the fire came to fulfill all the commandments and then be killed on the cross, where he finished the plan that he had from the beginning when he created everything. So I hope that's understood. Also, if we separate this right here, that will be the son of my fire is the last, or the Taf, of course, right? And I'm sure we could continue seeing things there. So let's just go back. So here, this right here is that word that we just saw. And it is exactly the same word right here. Bereshit, bara, would be created. Elohim et hashamayim, the heavens, and haaretz, and the earth. The whole verse is amazing and it's very powerful. And eventually we will see it again and see more about it. I'll try and focus on John, but the connection is clear. So John is making another Bereshit, another Genesis. That's why Yahushua is the last Adam. He came to start everything again, but in the spiritual sense, because from Adam till John the Baptist, it was all in a physical sense, according to the letter, to the flesh. That's why Mashiach in John 4, as we will see, says to a woman, the time is coming and now is when the true worshipers will worship Yahweh in spirit and in truth. And I mentioned that verse a lot. Maybe you've noticed it because it is important to understand that before Mashiach came, they were all worshiping, and not even only before. Then after he left and the apostasy, we were born into falsehood as well. But the point is that everybody before Mashiach was worshiping according to the flesh and a lie, falsehood, because he said that from his time on, then the possibility to worship according to the spirit and the truth would be there. So that is very important. So in the beginning, Bereshit, was the word. The word. Remember how I mentioned that in Bereshit we have the words in my head? So Yahweh is the mind. The Ruach, the spirit, is the thought that emanated from that mind, meaning his will, his desire to create, to love, to give, to save. And then his word, the Messiah, is the image of that thought, the Savior, the one who came to fulfill the will of the Father, the mind. So the mind had the thought, and through the thought came the word, and through the word, all things were created. And that's why in Genesis, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And when we see how did he do that, it says, and Elohim said, let there be light. And Elohim said. So that's why we have here that in the beginning was the word. Because when he created everything in the beginning, he did it through his words by saying, let there be light. In the beginning was the word, dabar in Hebrew. And I won't do this. I don't know. Maybe I will. Perhaps I hope you guys like it. But dabar, you see how we have here the first two letters of Bereshit? If we add the dalet, we have dabar, which is word. It's also a thing because everything has a word attached to it, its name, right? So in Hebrew, dabar, which is this right here, is word, is thing, object. But look how it is formed by the dalet, which is a door, and bar, which is son. And Yahushua the son said, I am the door, who happens to be the dabar, the word. And how do you say a word, a dabar? By opening your mouth as a door and allowing the word as the son to come out, the son of the thought. I hope that was understood as well. So in the beginning in Bereshit, there was the dabar, the word. And the word was with Elohim. And the word was Elohim. Remember that Elohim is a plural word, means mighty ones. So that is the reason why the word is with Elohim, yet is Elohim, because it is like the word that comes out of the mind through the thought. They are all one in the sense that they are acting for one purpose, that of the mind, who had the will that was then expressed by the word. Is that clear? So that is the Father, the Spirit, and the Son. So in the beginning was the word, which is also, I think, and I just thought of this, but and it's not that deep, but um you I think this is a verse that also shows the importance of communication. A lot of people expect things to happen, yet never say a word about it. And then they are disappointed with the results, yet they never said a word about it. They only said it to complain when it was too late. So in the beginning was the word. The only way for a beginning to happen is through the word. We should communicate with each other, and that means in every way, as friends, as partners, as married couples, etc. Communication is key, because in the beginning was the word, was not the the eye looking all weird, right? Like trying to speak with the eyes, or none of that. The word is key. So in the beginning was the word, and the word was with Elohim. The fact that it says in the beginning was the word, and we read in Genesis that it says, let there be light, shows that when everything was created, the word was already there because everything was created through the word. So if the word was already there before creation, that means that the word is eternal, just like Yahweh is eternal. And that is why, like I was saying, Elohim is plural. Im in Hebrew is the plural, as in the letter S in English, for instance. So in the beginning was the word, and the word was with Elohim, because it was Yahweh through his Ruach that was deciding to create through the word. So Elohim with the word. And the word was Elohim because he was the manifestation of that thought that came from the mind. He was in the beginning with Elohim. Yahushua, who is the word, in the beginning was already there with Elohim. So if he was already there, I repeat, that means that he is eternal like Yahweh. Because when beginning happened, when the start of all things happened, when time was created, he was already there. And that is huge. And that is key to understand something that is going to come later, and I'll explain it again when it happens. But we read that Yahushua came to the world, and the world rejected him. And the reason why is because he is not part of the world, because when the world was created, he was already existing, for he always did through Yahweh. So when he came to the world, he was an anomaly pretty much to the world. So the world rejected that which couldn't comprehend. So he was in the beginning with Elohim. All came to be through him. So here we are seeing John explaining it a little bit. All came to be through him. And without him, not even one came to be that came to be. Once again, very clear, very deep. Everything that was created through him, and nothing that was created without him. All came to be through him, as the word that said, let there be light, let there be a firmament, separate the waters, and everything else. And without him, not even one came to be that came to be. So all the angels were created through him as well. In him was life. In him was life. And the life was the light of men. So it's interesting that it says in him was life, in a way like saying that Yahweh is life, who came through Mashiach. So he was in him. And that's why Mashiach then explains that he was given life in so that he could also give it to us, eternal life, as a power. Because my point also is that remember that Yahweh doesn't have life, he is life. He is wisdom. He is knowledge. He is power. Is not like humanity that we attain stuff and we can also lose it because it is separated from and it exists independent of us as well. Like meaning others can have power, others can have money, etc. But Yahweh is one. So there's nothing else beside him. So all that is good, powerful, excellent is him in a higher or lower level, depending on how many filters there are for his light to shine in whatever vessel he decides to shine. So in him was life, in this case, the main vessel, Yahushua HaMashiach. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Yahushua is the life, the light, the truth. All those three are very, very connected in what they mean or what they represent. The truth is absolute, but is an abstract thought. So it is understood through calling it light, for instance, because we know how important light is and how light is connected to life. And those two connected to the truth. That's why, as we have also spoken about, the tree of life, which could be also called the tree of truth, because once we eat of Mashiach, we know the truth that makes us free in order to use now the knowledge of good and evil according to the truth and not according to feelings or other things, to the imagination. So in him was life, right? Eternal life, true life. And the life was the light of men, because also the connection of light or electricity to make things work, in this case, light to give life, right? When somebody has died, it is as if something turned off. The light within him left. So the light is the life, and that is the truth, Yahushua. And the light, and also, this is showing that Yahushua is the word, and he is the tree of life, the truth. Just by these 4 verses, we have these 4 truths regarding Mashiach and his role, his part in everything, which is pretty much uh, the medium through whom Yahweh created everything. So in him was life, and the life was the light of men. Remember that in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth, and then it says, and Elohim said, let there be light, or let light come to be, and light came to be. And Elohim saw the light that it was good. So the first creation was light on the first day. Now John, after saying in the beginning was the word, and the word was with Elohim, and the word was Elohim, now he's saying in him was life, and the life was the light of men, as in the first day, the creation of light. Remember as well that on the 4th day, which represents the 4th millennium, which is when Yahushua came to die for our sins, on the 4th day, the sun was created, the main light in the firmament. And Yahushua said, I am the light of the world. And that's why he came on the 4th millennium as the 4th day. And that has to do as well with the day in which he was born, because the sun was created on the 4th day to begin the counting of the days of the calendar. So Yahushua came and was born on the first day, not just because of that, but for other reasons, was born on the first day of the calendar, the first of Aviv, also called Nisan. So in him was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shines. This is beautiful and deep. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. 2 things, and also depending on the translation, how this could be interpreted, but both interpretations that I will mention are valid. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So one thing is that no matter if they killed Mashiach, that was the darkness trying to overcome the light because he was jealous of it, because he couldn't control it, just like the Pharisees with Mashiach. When Yahushua died, he actually became the authority over all, not only light, but also darkness. He won everything, took over. So darkness, which represents also foolishness, ignorance, is what led them to kill him, thinking that would defeat him, and not understanding that that would actually bring him up and then to his feet. So, and the light shines in the darkness. Yahushua came and gave the truth, the true understanding of scriptures, but everybody was in darkness. And not only that, most were darkness themselves, and therefore couldn't comprehend a word he was saying. They were stuck in ignorance, and the darkness has not overcome it. So he wasn't able to understand it because darkness cannot overcome light. You have to become light, and that is only through Mashiach. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from Elohim whose name was Yohanan. So now John is talking about the other John, right? The disciple is talking about the Baptist. So there was a man sent from Yahweh whose name was Yahuhanan. This one came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all might believe through him. This one came for a witness. So this is important. For instance, showing how, well, in this case, John the Baptist came as a witness that Yahushua was Mashiach. Then Mashiach came as a witness that Yahweh is the Father. And now the two witnesses of Revelation 11, one of which is Eliyahu, who happens to be also John the Baptist. There are two witnesses in Revelation 11 that come to bear witness that Yahushua is Hamashiach, because we need two or three to testify, right? In according to the law, two or three witnesses to confirm something. So John the Baptist said that Yahushua is the Messiah, and now the two witnesses come to say that he's the Messiah. So now we have two or three with John the Baptist, who came before Mashiach. So it is, well, depending on how we see it as well, because I already mentioned that he's Eliyahu and one of the two is Eliyahu. So in that sense, we could say that Yahushua came to give witness of Yahweh, and the two witnesses come to give witness of Yahushua, and therefore making everything true. So two or three. In this case, talking about the Baptist, this one came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all might believe through him. Now, this that I'm going to explain is also is well, I think it's very important. It's deep as well. So I already explained how Yahushua said that everything that they were doing pretty much was wrong before he came, because when he came, then the true worshipers would worship Yahweh in truth and in spirit. So before that, they were not doing so. It was in falsehood and flesh instead of truth and spirit, falsehood and flesh. So John the Baptist came to close that time of the flesh. That's why Yahushua said, of those born of women, there is none as John the Baptist, Yahuhanan the Immerser, but the least in the kingdom of Yahweh will be greater than him. So he was saying, starting from Mashiach, the smallest of all who enters the kingdom would be greater than John the Baptist, who was the greatest of all before Mashiach. So that is the difference between the kingdom of the flesh and the kingdom of the spirit. All right. So the kingdom of the flesh was created for us to understand that of the spirit, because everything that we can see is so that we understand something that we cannot see. Yet the things that we see are going to disappear, and those that we cannot see will remain. So that's why we need to focus on that which we cannot see, yet use that which we can see to seek that which is invisible, which is Yahweh mainly, of course. So before Mashiach, everything was to represent the invisible, that which would come. After Mashiach would be the manifestation of those things that were represented through the historical accounts that we see in the scriptures. So John the Baptist, Yahuhanan the Immerser, came to give witness of the fact that Yahushua is the Messiah. And it is key because John the Baptist was of the time of the flesh, of the letter, and he was able to realize that Yahushua was the Messiah. Therefore, condemns his generation who rejected Yahushua as the Messiah. I hope this is understood because it is important. So he came as a witness to condemn the generation that would reject him. Because if he wouldn't, or let's say everybody from the time of the flesh, of which John the Baptist was the last, they would not have believed, then they would have an excuse. But since he believed and as a witness said it, then that made them um, liable pretty much for punishment. So this one came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all might believe through him. So since they were of his time, of the flesh, of his kingdom, meaning John the Baptist and the rest of them, to whom he said he is the Messiah, the Lamb that takes the sin from the world. Um, the idea, or what they were supposed to do, was to believe in Mashiach through John the Baptist, by him being one of them and telling them that he is the Messiah. They should have believed. That was the point, the idea, even though Yahweh knew that they weren't going to. But it is important to understand that, because John the Baptist, even though he was the greatest of all men and he was Yahushua's cousin, and I'm sure he's in paradise waiting for the new body that he will receive on the fifth seal and other things. Um, he represented the angel that was in charge of prophecy before Mashiach. And since that angel was in charge of prophecy, he will be the one in charge of scriptures, right? In the sense that he knew the scriptures as if he was told to relate everything that was written. For obviously everything was inspired by the Ruach, but there was an angel in charge of giving those inspired writings to the Nevi'im, to the prophets. So in the secret book of Jacob, or James as they would call him, Yahushua is talking, and he says that um with the head of John the Baptist, when they cut his head, they were cutting the head of prophecy, meaning that since John the Baptist represents that angel that was in charge of prophecy, when they cut off the head of John, that was to show us in this reality that the angel who was in charge of prophecy was being cut off. He was taken out of his job. Because remember that from the beginning, death reigned. Then with the law, with Moshe came the law and the prophets. And then with Mashiach came the favor and the truth. So pretty much 2000 years, 2000 years, 2000 years. Death, the first 2000, law and the prophets, the second 2000, and the third 2000, favor and truth through Mashiach. So the law and the prophets was under the authority of an angel that was represented by John. That angel, just like John, was supposed to show who is the light, meaning who is the Messiah. And people were supposed to believe through it, but they didn't. Just like those who claim to believe in the Torah and rejected Mashiach. They claim to believe in the prophets and rejected Mashiach as it was prophesied. So this one came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all might believe through him. Just like Yahushua said, you have the scriptures and you believe that you have life in them, and you do not see that they are the ones that speak of me, and you do not want to come to me to receive life. So just like John the Baptist was supposed to show who the Messiah is for them to believe, the prophecies were showing who the Messiah is for them to believe, that all might believe through him. He was not that light, but that he might bear witness of that light. This is important because Lucifer is represented by a torch. He had a light given to him. That's why he's called Lucifer or Halel, because he would work as a light, but as a lamp, not as the light itself. The essence is Mashiach. He is the light. And we can speak of light as wisdom, as knowledge, as other things. In this case, Halel was given a little bit of light, of power, of authority to do his job as the angel in charge of prophecy. So let's see that prophecy as that light that was given to him as the angel in charge of it. So the light given to him, he was supposed to give it to men through the scriptures. And that light that was passing through the lamp was supposed to lead us to Mashiach, who is the actual light itself. But not John the Baptist, but Halel, that angel who was in charge of it, eventually wanted the honor for himself. So he wanted to be seen as the light, yet he wasn't the light. He was just given a little bit of light. So he was not the light. Now talking about John the Baptist, but I'm saying all of this so that you can see the connections. He was not that light, but that he might bear witness of that light. He was, meaning Mashiach, he was the true light, which enlightens every man coming into the world. So it just said just a moment ago, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This world is darkness. Like if we talk about heaven and earth, that would be light and darkness. The light, meaning the heavens, came to this world, meaning darkness, but darkness wasn't able to overcome it, even though it tried by killing him. Yet Yahweh resurrected him because he was given life, which is the light that enlightens every man. So he was the true light, Yahushua. And if says the true light, that means there is a false light. And that is the light or the supposed revelation given by Halel and his minions. So Yahushua is the true light. Therefore, that means that there is a false light. Remember that Satan appears as an angel of light. Even though he was fired from his job, he can still appear to this reality, to humanity, as an angel of light. But Yahushua is the true light. Also, is like saying that the light that was created in Genesis was not the true light. That was the representation of the true light, which is Yahushua. And that is clear by the fact that the light in Genesis 1:2 was created. Yahushua was not created. He is the word through whom everything was created. As we just saw, in the beginning was the word. So if in the beginning was the word and everything was created through the word, even the light, then that light of Genesis 1 was not the true light, but the word was the actual light because he gave light to the world. He was the true light which enlightens every man coming into the world. So you see how we spoke about the light here, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So that is connected to the first verse. Let there be light. I mean, the first chapter of Genesis, second verse, let there be light. Then he speaks about other things. And then he goes back to the light. He was the true light, which enlightens every man coming into the world, like the sun, the light of the world, coming into the world every morning, every morning. So he was in the world, and the world, talking obviously about Mashiach, he was in the world, and the world came to be through him, and the world did not know him. Like I said, he was seen as an anomaly because he was not part of the creation, for everything was created through him. So creation didn't know him, rejected him, and that's why they killed him. And everybody who rejected him manifested or revealed through their rejection that they are of the world, that they are darkness, that they are ignorance, that they are not from the Father, from the light, from the third heaven. So he was in the world, and the world came to be through him, and the world did not know him. So even though it sounds amazing, well, in many ways, but mainly, like I was saying, like, how is it possible that the world didn't know him if the world was created by him? Like, um, it actually makes all the sense in the world, like I said, because Yahushua is above creation, like in a different dimension or in a different dimension, and therefore, like, I don't know if you have ever seen the representation of how beings in a 2D would perceive beings from uh, 3D, or if we keep going up or down in dimensions, is quite interesting. Like for instance, um, let's say, well, yeah, like if we were to invade a 2D reality, like a plane, like a piece of paper, those within that reality could only see what is within that piece of paper. So if I were to make my finger go through the piece of paper, even though my finger is like you guys, well, can see or have your own fingers, like if we go through it, we know how the finger looks like, how it feels, and everything. Yet those in that dimension, in that piece of paper, would only see a ring, whatever ring of the finger is at that moment on that dimension, on that level. So they would see a ring when we know that that is not the shape of fingers. So, and that is just in two dimensions, two different dimensions. Imagine when we talk about Yahweh, who is above all, the highest, and us being in the lowest when it comes to the spiritual dimensions. So when he came to the world from such a high, meaning the highest dimension of all, into the lowest was not able to understand what it was, as they just saw the ring. So he was in the world, and the world came to be through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own. So that's how sad it gets. Now that is just amazing, right? Because he came to his own. This verse means not only what I think everybody understands or most regarding the fact that he came to the Yahudim. He came from Israel to talk to Israel, the people who were supposed to be expecting him, who had all the prophecies. So how amazing that even though they had all the prophecies and claimed to be expecting him, and even had Daniel 9 that said when to expect him, what year, right? Because nowadays they use the verse of no one knows the day or the nor the hour, and not understanding the verse neither, but at least they have that verse to hold on to it, not to believe anything, right? But back in the day, they had Daniel 9 telling them what year the Messiah would appear, and still they rejected him. So he came to his own, and that was prophesied, and Yahweh knew that it would happen because he was even prophesied by the fact that Yahudah, the father of the tribe of Yahudah, sold Joseph when he was 17 years old, when all of them saw him coming to them and they said, let's kill them. And then they decided to sell him to get something back. So he came to his own, and his own did not receive him. And on a higher level, if we actually see what he says there, meaning his own, that would mean even those who came from him from that higher level, but they, his own, were already in such a darkness spiritually because of our sins that even those that were his own couldn't receive him. But as we know, Yahweh allowed all of that so that a door would be open for those who are not his own, meaning for the Gentiles. So there will be people who did not come from the third heaven, but from the second, with whom Yahweh will have mercy in order to allow them to enter into the world to come. So he came to his own, and his own did not receive him. And I love this verse right here. But as many as received him, to them he gave the authority to become children of Yahweh. And he should say Yahweh, not Elohim, but I'll explain in just a moment. As many, which is beautiful as well, as many, doesn't have a limit, right? Because perhaps some, by misinterpreting the words, would say that there is a limit of 144,000. But remember that even when we talk about the 144,000, they are heads of households. So the number is bigger. Um, Even if we're going to count it like that, I repeat. But as many as received him, meaning Mashiach, to them he gave the authority, which is very powerful, to become children of Yahweh. And I say that it should say Yahweh, not Elohim, because the children of Elohim, according to what we see in the book of Job and the book of Genesis 6, they are the angels. Angels were children of Elohim, but not children of Yahweh. Because in Job, for instance, we see that all the children of Elohim came together before Yahweh. It doesn't say the children of Yahweh came together before him, but the children of Elohim. So the sons of Elohim, those are the angels. The sons of Yahweh are those who received Mashiach. Want to make that. But as many as received him, to them he gave the authority to become children of Yahweh. To those believing in his name. So the name, once again, we see the importance. To those believing in his name. So another thing that we see here is that, as you guys may have heard, a lot of people claim or say that everybody's a child of God, right? They say that everybody is a son or daughter of God. Yet scripture says that only those who believe in the name of Yahushua have the authority to become children of Yahweh. So everybody is a creature of Elohim. But those who believe in the name of the Messiah and receive him as such become, through adoption, through Mashiach, become, for he is the intercessor, become children of Yahweh. So only those who believe in his name are children of Yahweh. Other than that, they are creatures of Elohim until they accept and believe in his name. So it says, to those believing in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of desire of flesh, nor of the desire of men, but of Yahweh. Because it was Yahweh himself who revealed to them through the Messiah, for them to accept the Messiah and through him become children of Yahweh. Who were born, because remember that we needed to be born of water and of spirit, meaning in this world and in the next one through Yahushua HaMashiach. So we needed to come through a woman and then through the Ruach given to us by Mashiach through his death and resurrection and our faith in it. So who were born not of blood, nor of the desire of flesh, not just because um a man like our father decided that day that he had the desire to be with uh our mother, even though that obviously happened, there was something behind all of those actions, all of those things that happened for us to come to this world. But even after that, the fact that we came to the world and he knew us from the womb, we were in sin, and still he revealed himself to us and got us out through the Messiah, because he had the desire to make us be born again, now through the Spirit. So, who were born not of blood, nor of the desire of flesh, nor of the desire of men, but of Yahweh. It was he who had the desire for us to be born. And that is interesting, because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I've had the thought of, why was I born? So there's your answer. Yahweh wanted it. And that's important, because, well, that means a lot. And obviously that's enough. Well, my point is that many times we think, and like I repeat, I won't talk for you guys, but in my case, like really, like, why was I born? If somebody would have asked me, or if I would have known what it was, perhaps I would have said no, no, thank you, I'm cool. Like in ignorance and in immaturity, perhaps one would even blame their parents for bringing them into the world, which is, like I repeat, immaturity and other things. But here we see that it wasn't because of the will of our parents, even the desire of their flesh. We came to this world because of the will of the Father, Almighty Creator of all things. So that means there is a huge purpose for our existence. And that is the case because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be understanding and reading this at this moment. Is that understood? So, and the word became flesh. So that word that created everything became flesh. And interestingly enough, confirming this that it said right here, who were born not of blood, nor the desire of flesh, nor of the desire of men. Why? Because Yahushua was born through a virgin. She had not given her first blood. She had not had her first period. So he was not born of blood, which represents sin, nor the desire of flesh, nor the desire of men, because she was still a virgin. So since we are born through Mashiach, we are born in the same way, through the virgin Ruach, the virgin spirit. I don't mean Miriam. That was the physical part, right? I mean the Ruach HaKodesh. And the word became flesh, and this actually I am editing a video regarding this chapter actually. Well, the birth of Mashiach, and this verse is key when it comes to that because there are a lot of people who believe that Mashiach was born on Sukkot, and one of the things that they use to claim that is this verse, but that is when they translate it in their own way and interpret that there where it says pitched his tent says that he made a sukkah. So they say, oh, you see a sukkah, so he was born on Sukkot. However, it makes a lot more sense for many reasons that the word that they would have used there is, or at least would have the root shakan. Shakan is the verb inhabit, and that is the root of the noun mishkan, which is where the Ark of the Covenant was with the tablets, which was the first temple. And as we know, Yahushua, his body is the temple, and therefore his body is the tent, the Mishkan. And he came and inhabited the earth. So he made a Mishkan in his body to be with us, just like he did in the desert. Sukkot only happens 7 days of a year. And both Sukkot, they translated as tabernacles. Mishkan, they translated as the tabernacle. So they even translated the same, even though they are two different words. And because of the way each word is used throughout the Tanakh, I believe very strongly that the word that would be used originally there, and is not only my belief, just in case there are even translations in the Hebrew that have that word there. Here, it would represent or use the verb shakan and not the word sukkah. Or he made a mishkan, we could also say, which is also like a tent, right? The tent of reunion, the Ohel Moed. So, and the word became flesh. So the word got flesh, just like the Ruach of Yahweh got a tent in the desert to represent the flesh that he would have eventually. And all of that is important because the tent was raised up, and Yahweh told Moshe to inaugurate it on the first of the month of Aviv, meaning the first day of the year, which is when the sun was created on the fourth day. That's why the year always begins on the fourth day of the week. So Yahushua was born on a fourth day, for he is the light of the world. He was killed on a fourth day of the week. He was born on the first of Aviv because he was the Mishkan that Yahweh used to enter this reality and inhabit it. Just like in the first of Aviv, Moshe inaugurated the Mishkan in the desert. Another reason why is because the law says that the lamb that was sacrificed on Pesach had to be 1 year old. If Yahushua was born on Sukkot, depending on how you see it, either he would be too young or too old as a lamb, when we see it as a lamb, to be sacrificed. In fact, the lambs that would be sacrificed on the temple would be born in Bethlehem, which is where Mashiach was born. obviously a year before. And that is why the pastors, or the shepherds, I should say in this case, the shepherds were awaiting the birth of the lambs that would be sacrificed 1 year later, when the angels came and told them that the lamb that would take away the sin from the world was being born at that moment. So Yahushua was born in the same month that he would be killed later on, because there had to be a year between birth and death when it came to the lamb, the actual literal lamb. But in this case, there would be uh, a sign or a representation of the fact that he would be born and killed on the same month, which happens to be Aries, which is the month of the ram, as in this case, the lamb being sacrificed on that month. So, and the word became flesh and made a mishkan among us. And we saw his steam, which also connects to the Mishkan, because the steam of Yahweh entered the Mishkan when it was inaugurated. We don't see that regarding Sukkot, for instance. Obviously, Yahweh is with us on Sukkot, but I mean, a mention of them making a sukkah and the steam manifesting inside of it, just like it does so clearly when it comes to the Mishkan. And we saw his steam as of an only brought forth of a father. Steam, the honor as of an only brought forth of a father, the only begotten one, the first. And I say first, even though it says only brought forth, because, well, there are many things to be said here. For instance, in the book of Daniel, we see that when he came as Mashiach Nagid, but then Mashiach would be cut off, and then the Nagid would manifest. So in a way, when he came with the two mantles, and he got killed for one. And now the second mantle must manifest as well in the flesh to complete that second part, that second role as the Nagid, the prince, to become king. So I say that in the sense that he came as the only brought forth. And through the world killing him, that would separate in two manifestations, because they would cut Mashiach from Nagid. But then Yahweh will bring them together, as we see prophesied in Zechariah 14:9 and Ezekiel 37 from verse 15 on. So, steam as of an only brought forth of a father. Also important to understand that he is the only one who came directly from the Father. And then anybody who accepts him can become a child of the Father, but through him, by becoming part of his body, because he is the only brought forth of the Father. And that's why the congregation is the body of Mashiach. And we can also see it as marriage, right? Because they become, the bride and the groom become one flesh, one body. Only brought forth of a father, complete in favor and truth. So you see how favor and truth came through Mashiach. Before Mashiach, there was no completeness of favor and truth. There was a certain part of truth, but mixed with a bunch of lies, and therefore it made the whole thing falsehood. There was no favor because everybody was under accusation because of sin. So there was no favor. Favor is to be forgiven, receive mercy. So, steam as of an only brought forth of a father, complete in favor and truth. That's why he brought salvation. He gave us the favor in order to become favorites. He, Yahweh, does have favorites, as we see when he speaks of Jacob and Asaph. He loved Jacob, but hated Asaph, right? Obviously, because of their deeds, not just because he decided to be so. Because of the way they acted, Yahweh chose one over the other, and that's to receive his favor, for him to forgive even if you did something. So Yahushua brought the favor because he completed the whole Torah. He made all the commandments. He fulfilled all the commandments. So he was complete in favor. And through him, Yahweh is in favor of us. That's why we pray to the Father in the name of the Son, so that he so that he may show us favor. So complete in favor and truth. Favor and truth. And that's why it is only through him and through the Spirit that comes through him that we can understand the truth regarding the scriptures and everything in general. For he is the truth, and we must decide and use our free will according to the truth, which is part of what we were reading yesterday. Yohanan bore witness of him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me has become before me, because he was before me." There are several translations of this as well, just in case it sounds a bit weird. So I repeat, as he was saying also earlier in the same chapter, Yohanan or Yahuhanan bore witness of him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said," right? Because that means John the Baptist was preaching. He had his own disciples, and he would tell them, "He who comes after me has become before me, because he was before me." So one of the translations, in a way, says, "He who comes after me came before me because he is before me." So that to some would be a contradiction, because how can he come before if he's the one coming after? And the point is that Yahushua is the word through whom everything was created. And therefore, even though Mashiach manifested on this world in the flesh after John the Baptist did, Yahushua was first, because he existed before John the Baptist came to be. And that is also like if the angel Hillel, the one in authority over prophecy before Mashiach came, as if he was saying that Mashiach is the light that was before the lamp, right? And the lamp projects light. So that light that comes after the lamp was before the lamp, because light needed to exist before the lamp would exist, because the lamp would have no use for, would have no purpose if there was no light, right? So there's a lamp that sends light, but the light that comes after actually existed before. And that is what Hillel did and John the Baptist did. So Yahuhanan bore witness of him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me has become before me, because he was before me." And out of his completeness, we all did receive, and favor upon favor. For the Torah was given through Moshe. The favor and the truth came through Yahushua HaMashiach. This is part of what I was saying earlier, that first death ruled over the earth. Then came through Moshe the Torah, the law. And then through Mashiach, favor and the truth. So here we go again. And out of his completeness, we all did receive. And out of his completeness, for we saw that he was complete in truth and in favor, right? Right here. And out of his completeness, for he came to complete and fulfill the Torah, we all did receive. So just like he is the word that created everything, so everything that was created received a part of his energy in order to be created, in order to exist, even till this point. Whatever exists is because Yahweh wills it to exist, and that exists through the word, which is Yahushua. So from his power came the energy that would give existence to everything. Just like spiritually, from his favor, from his truth, we all receive teaching, revelation, life, happiness, etc., forgiveness, favor. And out of his completeness, we all did receive, and favor upon favor, right? Because he gives us so many things, everything. Every good thing comes from him, and it is all a favor. Even those who do not accept Mashiach, they receive favor upon favor because Yahweh is good. But afterwards, they will be asked what happened with everything that they received. Why didn't they accept Mashiach? And that's when judgment will happen. But obviously, when it comes to forgiveness of sins and other things, they come through our belief in Mashiach. I'm just saying that everybody who has life is receiving that favor from Yahweh. Everybody who has health is receiving that favor from Yahweh. Anybody who eats is receiving that favor from Yahweh, etc. For the Torah was given through Moshe, the Torah, the law, that which accuses. Remember that the Torah was given to accuse, to show that we were all under sin. So it is exactly what Hillel would do, accuse, for he is the accuser. So from Moshe, Hillel got hired to be the accuser, pretty much. For the Torah was given through Moshe. The favor and the truth came through Yahushua HaMashiach. So the forgiveness of sins, according to the true interpretation of the Torah, fulfilled in Mashiach, is what gives us forgiveness of sins. No one has ever seen Yahweh. This is huge as well, because the Yahudim believed that Moshe had seen Yahweh. Manoach thought he had seen Yahweh. And even if we read it like that, no one has ever seen Elohim, the true Elohim, the Almighty One, the highest one, that is Yahweh. And I say that we could read it like that because there are many verses where it says that they saw Elohim, that they talked to Elohim. But in that case, they were talking to angels, not Yahweh. Or at least it could be to Yahweh, but through an angel. So they were seeing an angel, not Yahweh. They thought that the angel that they spoke to was Yahweh. And that was also to show that they were all stuck in the flesh, in appearances. They were stuck in a false light, that of this reality, that which they would see with these eyes instead of faith, because we walk by faith, not by sight, according to 2 Corinthians 5:7. So no one has ever seen Yahweh. So that means that Jacob didn't see Yahweh, Moshe didn't see Yahweh, Hanok didn't see Yahweh. No one has ever seen Yahweh. But since we walk by faith, not by sight, we are able to see him through that faith in Mashiach. Meaning we are able to see certain things about him, to know him better and know him more than most who claim to believe in him, yet don't believe in him through the name of Mashiach, as we just saw, because those who believe in his name receive the authority to become children of Elohim. So no one has ever seen Yahweh. Very important. What they saw were angels, confirming that there was an angel in charge whom they thought was the Most High. And that's why they got stuck with him. And when Mashiach came, they didn't recognize him as the son of that whom they worshiped, because they were worshiping an angel instead of the Most High Yahweh. So no one has ever seen Yahweh. All came to be through him, the only brought forth Son, who is in the bosom of the Father. He did declare. So the only one who has seen the Father, Yahweh, is the Son. Only Yahushua HaMashiach is the one who has seen the Father. And it would be like seeing himself in the mirror, because Yahushua is the image of the Father, as he told Filippo when he was asked, show us the Father, and he said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. So Yahushua is the image of the Father. No one has seen the Father, because if they had seen the Father, they would have recognized Mashiach as the Son, right? When you see a father and then you see the son, you're like, oh, I know where you come from. You look just like him, right? So if they would have known the Father, they had seen the Father, they would have recognized the Son. Yet they didn't. So that means they were seeing someone else. And that is important. And like I said, this is a huge chapter, and I hope everybody's getting it. And I'm going to continue to say that, not only because I always say it and because I'm also very interested in you guys understanding, but also because sadly I have come to realize in the last couple months or more, there are a lot of people who always claim to believe they understood actually were not understanding a thing, a dabar. um, so yeah, I really pray that you guys understand every detail, and not only that, but keep it in your heart so that the enemy cannot shake it off ever, as he has with some. So the only brought forth son who is in the bosom of the Father, he did declare. Now, this was the witness of Yahuhanan. This is like this pretty much starts another story. um in a way, because he continues talking about Yohanan giving witness, but this time he's going to give witness about himself. Um or lack of in a way. But this is very important, this part that is to come, because here we see that the Yahudim who knew the Torah, even though they didn't know Yahweh, they knew the Torah. Through the study of Torah and Tanakh, the prophets and the writings, they realized that there were three people that had to come, three people whom Yahweh would send. Of those three, normally in Christianity, they only speak about two. And the one left, they pretty much fuse it, they mix it with one of the other two. So they see it as two, just like they do with the the beast and the Antichrist. In Christianity, they mix the Antichrist and the beast as if they were one entity, not realizing there are two different entities. The same is what they do with the first and the last as one entity. In this case, a good one, but same issue. So here's a chapter or part of the chapter that is very important to understand that, and also that I believe is a one to remember for you guys if you guys want to talk to somebody about it or explain something about it. This is a great part to show that there will be another one other than the two that came 2000 years ago. So now this was the witness of Yahuhanan when the Yahudim sent from Jerusalem priests and Levites to ask him, "Who are you?" So John the Baptist, he was becoming famous, and they had to send people to ask who he was. And that shows that they didn't understand scriptures. They thought that, which happens to be always the case, that one projects on others what he is. So the Pharisees, since they wanted honor, since they would claim to be whatever they claim to be, they were expecting everybody to be the same way. So they were expecting John to look for honor and therefore claim to be whatever. So that's why they sent these witnesses. Yet that was not his way. And that's why we see the answer that he gives in just a moment. So now this was the witness of Yahuhanan when the Yahudim sent from Jerusalem priests and Levites to ask him, "Who are you?" And he confessed, and did not deny, but confessed, "I am not the Messiah." So the first, the most important, because through him everything else would um manifest. So they were also asking that because they were expecting the Messiah. So since John the Baptist was getting famous and followers, they sent to ask to see if he would claim to be the Messiah. So that's the first thing that he did. He denied to be the Messiah because his witness was that Yahushua is the Messiah. So he is the one who came to prepare the way for the Messiah, as prophesied in Malachi 3:1. Yet in that verse, it doesn't say that it is Eliyahu. just like also in Isaiah when it says the voice cries in the desert. That was John the Baptist, but it doesn't say in those words in that prophecy that it was Eliyahu, even though Yahushua tells us that John the Baptist is Eliyahu. But the prophecies about him coming don't mention the name Eliyahu. So it is quite possible that John the Baptist either did not know who he was in a previous life, he did not know that he was Eliyahu as Yahushua revealed him to be, or he knew that he was the Eliyahu of Revelation, I mean, of Malachi 3, yet they were asking about the Eliyahu of Malachi chapter 4 at the very end. And he knew that he wasn't that one. So there are two possibilities of the reason why he says the following. And they asked him, what then? Are you Eliyahu? So he said, I am not. I am not. So it is interesting that there are two reasons why they first, or he first claims not to be the Messiah, because that is the important one. And, well, no, obviously they are both important. I'm sorry, but in the sense that 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 was the one that would bring salvation, deliverance, and they were expecting deliverance from Rome. So that was the main focus. Is my point. And him knowing that, that's the first thing that he denies, to be the Messiah. But it's interesting because when it comes to the two witnesses, all points, as we see in Malachi 4, that first would come the witness like Moshe and then Eliyahu. Unlike we see in Malachi 3, the first would come Eliyahu and then Mashiach, and then the witness like Moshe. So in Malachi 3, we see that there will be one to prepare the way for the Messiah. Yet, as I already said, John is writing this book according to the interpretation of Sod. So it's the most profound interpretation, the most profound of the four books of the good news. And in this one, as you will see throughout the book, John, the disciple, writes about what Yahushua went through and what he said in the literal sense, but writes it in a way that spiritually represents what will happen with the second manifestation, that of the last. And like I said, in Malachi 4 says that the witness like Moshe appears first and then Eliyahu. So it is interesting that since this is written in the book of John, when the Yahudim come to ask, the first answer is, I'm not the Messiah. And then the second, I am not Eliyahu. But I'll continue. So, and they asked him, what then? Are you Eliyahu? So he said, I am not. And I repeat, since he was part of the time of the flesh, it is possible that he didn't understand his whole role. He didn't understand that he was Eliyahu himself. I do believe, because of answers that he gives later, that he knew he was the fulfillment of prophecy, but the prophecies that he knew regarding himself didn't mention the name Eliyahu, so he didn't know that he was Eliyahu, even though he was, because Mashiach said it. Like I said, the other possibility is that he understood that they were asking about the Eliyahu of the end times, and he knew that he wasn't in the end times, so he said, I am not. But then we see another question. If this was Christian, they wouldn't ask this third question, because to them is only the Messiah and Eliyahu. But here we see that it says, are you the prophet? And he answered, no. So there are three people that Yahweh would send. And that's why the enemy prepares three copies. The Messiah, that's why there will be a false Messiah, the Antichrist. Eliyahu, that's why there will be a false prophet, the religious leader, the second beast. And then the prophet like Moshe, who will become the leader, just like the first beast, which is the world leader, Revelation 13. So, are you the prophet? And he answered no. So here we have three people that Yahweh would send. The Yahudim knew it, but sadly the Christians forgot it, or they didn't see it, never were taught about it, whatever. And sadly, another point here is that Muslims use these verses to convince Christians to become Muslims, because the Muslims tell them that this prophet is Muhammad, which really doesn't make any sense for so many reasons. But since Christians were not taught about this, when a Muslim teaches them something that they didn't know, automatically most Christians believe that whatever the Muslims are telling them after that must be true as well. So it is a trap. This is talking about the prophet like Moshe, mentioned in Deuteronomy 18:15. The prophet like Moshe is one of the two witnesses of Revelation 11. Those two witnesses need to appear during the first 3.5 years of the last 7. So they appear when the very end of times is happening. Muhammad appeared a long time ago, died, and never resurrected, which is something that will happen with the prophet like Moshe and Eliyahu. They will die and resurrect 3.5 days later, as we see in Revelation 11. So Muhammad is not the prophet, not at all. Plus, Muhammad contradicts the Torah. How could the prophet like Moshe contradict the law given to Moshe? He should be able to now explain it according to Yahushua, for he is the key, for he is the Messiah. Now, Muhammad says that Yahushua was not the Messiah, says that he was only a prophet. So how can he be the prophet like Moshe if here we see that the other one would be the Messiah? Another contradiction. So there are many reasons why Muhammad cannot be the prophet like Moshe is not at all. Are you the prophet? And he answered, no. Therefore, they said to him, who are you? So that we give an answer to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself? What do you say about yourself? So they need an answer to bring back to the Pharisees, to the Yahudim. And he gives them one, which is from the book of Isaiah, as we see here, Isaiah 40, verse 3. He said, I am a voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of Yahweh, as the prophet Yeshayahu said. Interestingly enough, Yeshayahu, as in Yahushua, Yahweh saves. Yesha is from the same verb of salvation. Yahweh saves, and he will do it through Mashiach, who happens to be the way of Yahweh, right? Like the name of our channel. For Yahushua said, I am the way. Make straight, because he was preparing the way for Mashiach, who is the tzaddik, the righteous one. So I am a voice, doesn't say the voice. Remember that the voice is the last, Mikael. In this case, this is a voice of one crying in the wilderness. The wilderness represents, obviously, where there is no water. That's why he represents an angel that doesn't come from the third heaven, but from the second, that of angels. I am a voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of Yahweh, as the prophet Yeshayahu said. So he understood, according to this verse, that he, John the Baptist, was the fulfillment of that verse from Isaiah 40, verse 3. But that verse doesn't say that that manifestation would be Eliyahu. So that's why he said that he wasn't Eliyahu, which shows that he didn't know everything. He knew only what he needed to understand for the moment, as we then see when he is in jail that he actually doubts about Mashiach being the Messiah and sends messengers now to ask Mashiach if he was the Messiah. Even though they were cousins, even though Yahweh had told him about the sign of the dove would come over him like the Ruach, even though he saw that sign that Yahweh told him, then he was doubting. And I don't say that to say anything negative about him. I say that so that we understand that that happens in life. Time, memory fails, and sometimes those things that Yahweh did for us, the enemy tries to blur our sight so that we don't see those things, or so that we forget about those things, or so that we may justify those things as not of Yahweh, which is an issue. And those sent were of the Pharisees. And they asked him, saying, why then do you immerse if you are not the Messiah, nor Eliyahu, nor the prophet? So that means that they were not expecting anybody else other than these three, and nobody else other than these three should be immersing in water, baptizing. So that shows and confirms that he was one of these three. He just didn't understand which one. And in that case, Yahushua tells us that he was Eliyahu who had to come if you could receive it, right? So the immerser was Eliyahu. That's why he was immersing. All right. Yahushua was the Messiah. And then we have the prophet who would have to come in our time. So also we see these three as the three type of immersions. For John the Baptist came immersing in water, Mashiach came to immerse in the spirit, and the prophet in fire. But like I said, as we see in Daniel, Mashiach came as Mashiach Nagid, and he was cut off. Mashiach was cut off. So that could be a saying Mashiach the prophet, but Mashiach was cut off, and the prophet was left there for him to come later on. Um, so that's why when John the Baptist says, I immersed in water, but the one who comes after me will immerse you in the spirit and in the fire, that is because Yahweh will manifest as the first and the last, spirit and fire, Messiah and prophet. So, verse 26, Yahuhanan answered them, saying, I immersed in water, but in your midst stands one whom you do not know, the one coming after me who has become before me, whose sandal strap I am not worthy to loosen. This is very deep once again. Let me see just a second. Let me see questions here. Okay, I think this one. Verse 20 is written in a very strange way, kind of redundant. Do you think is because the original was in Hebrew? Maybe the Hebrew grammar would made good sense. Did it need it? Repeat confessed. Verse 20, let me check it out. And he confessed and did not deny, but confessed, I am not the Messiah. Um, well, yeah, it is very possible. Well, I already believe that it was written in Hebrew original, so it is very possible that what you're saying is true in the sense that it is because it was written in Hebrew and the way things are written in Hebrew, that then it was translated like this as redundant, because in Hebrew, um, when something is very, very clear or for sure, the same word is used twice, just a little bit different the first time. Like when it says, with death you will die, right? The day that you eat, with death you will die. Or for surely you will die, is that how they translated, but originally said, with death you will die. Um, and that happens a lot, like throughout scriptures. It's a way of speaking in Hebrew. So it is possible that that was the point here in confessing. He confessed, confessing, or he made a confession, confessing that he is not the Messiah, right? Also, the reason why that happens in Hebrew, and in this case we see it here, confess twice, would have to do with the fact that there needs to be two or three witnesses for everything. So since he was about to say something very important, it is like when Yahushua said, verily, verily, right? When he says, truly, truly, I say. So says it twice, which would be the same case because it is originally in Hebrew. Um, but saying it twice as saying that there are two witnesses at least regarding what he's going to say, meaning is for sure true. So in this case, that's the point. And he confessed and did not deny, but confessed. So that did not deny is pretty much the third witness. Is like confessing, but in the negative, right? Did not deny. Um, So, and he confessed, first witness, and did not deny, second witness, but confessed, third witness. I am not the Messiah. Three witnesses, like the three people that they were expecting. Um, it's interesting that confessed is twice, as in first and last, and did not deny would be Eliyahu in the middle. Messiah, Eliyahu, and the prophet. Confessed, did not deny, confessed. But yes, Elio, most likely that's another sign of the original Hebrew. All right, so second, yeah. So yeah, let's close it with these three. Yahuhanan answered them, saying, I immersed in water. Remember, I mentioned earlier how the water represented our birth in this world through the woman who is connected to water, and we are in water when we are in the womb. Then Mashiach came to give us the birth through the Spirit. And then the trials and tribulations will be the fire, through which gold will be manifested as such when everything else is burnt. Another way of seeing it is that the act of immersion in water was done by John the Baptist to represent repentance from sins, and the water represents death. So going into the water represents dying, and then coming out of the water represents resurrecting in Mashiach, being one with Mashiach, and from then on acting as Mashiach wants of us. So the immersion in water was to represent our immersion in the Spirit. That's why we were immersed in the name of Yahushua, because it is through the name of Yahushua that we are immersed in the Spirit, as we see in John 14:26 later on. So Yahuhanan answered them, saying, I immersed in water, like saying, my immersion is a representation, just like the Mabul, the flood of Noah, was the immersion of the whole world. That was the immersion for the first 2,000 years. The immersion for the time of the law was when Israel was within the cloud during the 40 years in the desert. And then came the immersion in the time of Yahuhanan, the immerser, in water to represent repentance and acceptance of Mashiach for resurrection. So I immersed in water, but in your midst. Now remember also that Yahushua is the water of life. So being immersed in water is also representing being immersed in him as the water of life to be able to resurrect and being covered by his spirit. So in your midst stands one whom you do not know, referring to Mashiach in that time. Now it's interesting that it says in your midst, because remember I said John was writing this book prophetically speaking about the second manifestation. Regarding the second manifestation, which is the prophet, like Moshe mentioned just a couple verses back, it says that Yahweh would raise a brother like him from their midst. So now saying, but in your midst stands one, obviously in that time was referring to Mashiach, but prophetically and connecting it with the words mentioned in Deuteronomy would refer to the end times when he would manifest in the midst of the people. But in your midst stands one whom you do not know. Why? Because he came from the Father, and no one has seen the Father, so no one knew the Son either. And not only they didn't know him yet because his ministry officially known by everybody had not started, but mainly because spiritually they could not recognize him, for they were part of the world and he was not part of the world, but the world was created through him, so the world did not recognize him. But in your midst stands one whom you do not know. And when it comes to the second manifestation represented here by these words, in your midst, whom you do not know, is like the fact that the Son of Man would come like a thief in the night. And he wouldn't be recognized either. Just like Moshe would put a veil on his face. The last will not have a literal veil, but there will be a spiritual veil on the faces of everyone, not to recognize him, other than his sheep, of course, because the sheep listen to the voice of the good shepherd and follow him. They recognize him. John 10, which is wonderful. Mainly when I think about what I was thinking earlier that I told you guys, the understanding. Yahweh is the one giving the understanding, and the understanding will be received by those who are the sheep. So the one coming after me, that one that you do not know, as he said there to the Pharisees, but in your midst stands one whom you do not know, the one coming after me, the one. Um, And obviously, that connects with the fact that he is the only begotten son, only one of the Father. The one coming after me, who has become before me, just like the light existed before the lamp, just like Mashiach, the man, existed before Hillel. The one coming after me, who has become before me, whose sandal strap I am not worthy to loosen. This is interesting as well, because, for instance, the book of life is sealed with 7 seals. Those seals need to be broken in order to open the book. Just like a scroll could also be uh, tied up with strings that need to be loosened for the scroll to be open. And I say that connecting it to the sandal straps because remember that in the scriptures we see that the sandals represent the good news. The good news that were given to us through the disciples of Mashiach. John the Baptist did not become a disciple of Mashiach, which is interesting for many reasons. One of them, that he represented the end of the time of the flesh, and Yahushua represented the beginning of the time of the spirit, the kingdom of the earth and the kingdom of the heavens. So John the Baptist, by saying, whose sandal strap I am not worthy to loosen, in a way he's saying that Yahushua is in a different level and he's not worthy to even strap his sandals. But spiritually, he's saying that he was not worthy because of the time in which he came, the way in which he came to the world. He was not worthy to be part of his disciples because he was of a different time. He was not worthy to be preaching the good news, meaning to strap the sandals of Mashiach, because the sandals represent the good news. So strapping would be like being able to teach them to spread the good news, just like you put your sandals on to walk a certain distance. That's why it represents bringing the good news to others. So he's saying, I am not allowed, I am not worthy to be his disciple and teach his teachings, his good news. He had to come before to prepare the way. Obviously, that's a lot of worth. And that is why Mashiach said, of those born of women, there is no one greater than John the Baptist. But John the Baptist says, I am not worthy to um, strap the sandals. So, well, yeah, to loosen the straps of his sandals, right? And I repeat, that will be representing to teach, to explain the good news, open the book to teach it in order for it to be understood. That is what losing the straps of his sandals would represent. And then he says, this took place in Aniyah, Beit Aniyah, beyond the Yarden, where Yohanan was immersing. That is verse 28. Well, it says here, Bet Tabarah, the house of the ford. Yeah, depending on the translation, one says Beit Tabarah and the other one Bet Aniyah. All right. So, yeah, we're going to leave it here tonight. And next study will begin with on the next day.